Swift now having its own blockchain for fast settlement, is the bridge asset pitch still valid, or do you think gold's shifted since that?
No, I think that XRP is the bridge between traditional finance and blockchain, decentralized finance. Like, listen, like, I'm not scared of Swift. Swift hasn't really changed since the 1960s. I don't think they're going to wake up one day and say, like, hey, let's revolutionize, payments. I don't think that's how they're built. I don't think that's what their culture is about. I think that you're going to see new companies come and use this technology. I think you're going to see banks bypass old legacy technologies and move directly to blockchain. You're already seeing the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity, come into this space. And the great thing about blockchain technology is you need fewer intermediaries, not more.
Speaking of XRP and the value, I started a little experiment last week. What I do, I play, I toy, my whole background, I write experiments and simulations. And I said, well, let me just look at the top 10 crypto assets over the last year, and let me run 500,000 different combinations of strategies on these over this last year. And the algorithm came up with this stuff. So when I search for the top algorithms by IRR and by number of trades and by win percentage, literally, even in a down market going from $3 to sub 150, the top 10 strategies are XRP strategies.
Welcome everyone. With so much negativity, I did want to start this video with something positive. XRP remains at the epicenter of everything Ripple is building. Evernorth CEO remains bullish on XRP adoption. And as geopolitical tensions keep rising in the Middle East, the necessity for a neutral bridge asset hits a new all-time high. I do want to provide a market update about XRP. I know a lot of you are asking me what I think is going to happen in the next weeks to come. So in this video, I'm going to start with my short-term perspective. I'm going to share my honest thoughts. This is my unfiltered opinion. I am not bullish on the short term, and I have been telling you since XRP was above $3. I have been telling you for a long time, I am not bullish on the short term, but I remain bullish on the long term. As of now, there is little to do with charts. It's about geopolitical tensions. This is where my focus is right now. With BTC, we need to be watching for $67,000. We are actually very close to that support level. We are currently trading below $68,000. So we need to be watching for this yellow line here on the chart, $67,000. Losing $67,000 could have serious consequences for the charts. Oil is trading above $100 once again. So we might see a new retest of the all-time high this week, and of course that's very bad for the overall markets, including BTC, XRP, and for the S&P 500. This is also very concerning. As you can see, someone is tracking stocks. This is extremely concerning. Insiders just started aggressively dumping all assets ahead of the US stock markets open. Every single insider is selling billions right now, 0 buys, 108 sells. This does not look good for the markets. I 100% agree. So this is not looking good for the S&P 500s. We all know there is a correlation between Bitcoin and the S&P 500s. So if we are about to see more red for the S&P 500, that means that crypto is going to be affected. If you want to understand more about the S&P 500, I highly recommend you to watch my last video. In fact, I explain exactly why we are actually very near to a setup like 2008. So if you want to understand more about the S&P 500 and the correlation with the crypto markets, I highly recommend you to watch my most recent video. If you are familiar with the 2008 financial crisis, this is a very similar pattern. As you can see, the S&P 500 is clearly showing signs of exhaustion, and this is going to 100% affect the crypto markets. And here is the harsh reality. There is a higher probability BTC breaks below $50,000 than there is BTC to reclaim $100,000. This is not my opinion. This is what the markets are showing. You can check the odds. Even in poly markets, it's actually giving us signs that we're going to see more downtrend for BTC. And sadly, XRP is still tied to BTC movements. We are still at no man's land with no clear bottom on the charts, no clear support levels either. If you watched my previous XRP market updates, you know that these are my ideal buy levels. Basically, I do have large orders at 72 cents, 75 cents, but it's not impossible. It's not entirely impossible that XRP is going to be trading below 70 cents. Be extremely cautious. In fact, I don't recommend anyone to be using leverage right now. And remember this, if you are trying to increase your XRP bags, the trend is your friend. There is no reason to be upset about this price correction. So this is where I am positioning my largest buying orders at 72 cents. I want to outbid other buyers. That's why I don't put at 70 cents, for instance. So here's the strategy. This is not a financial advice, but prepare for both scenarios. If XRP drops below $1, I think it's a massive buying opportunity. So considering the bearish trend of the overall markets, I think it's wise to have some liquidity aside. So here's the strategy. This is not a financial advice, but prepare for both scenarios. And if XRP reclaims $1.60, which I don't see happening on the short term, then the bearish claims are invalidated. But honestly, right now, I think there is a higher probability we are going to see XRP below $1 rather than XRP reclaiming $1.60. Once XRP becomes the invisible plumbing of the financial system, I am 100% sure XRP is going to eventually decouple from BTC. But right now we have to keep our feet to the ground. I don't like to make price predictions. I don't like to give deadlines. And remember this, XRP's success depends on the failure of the current financial system. And honestly, if you have been holding XRP long enough, you are not surprised at all by the world events that are unfolding in front of our eyes. The elites are crashing the system, XRP has to rise from the ashes. I also think the petrodollar is coming to an end. I have said 100 times. This is for me also an indicator the petrodollar is coming to an end. I don't think the US dollars are going to disappear, but I don't see the dollar as a world reserve currency anymore. And XRP is designed precisely for this moment. A liquidity crisis is unfolding in real time. Hence why you see this correction for gold, silver. Central banks and sovereign nations are selling their gold reserves because they have liabilities. Margin calls are happening in real time. I totally expect gold to rise again, but the fact that gold is dropping on the short term really gives us a hint a liquidity crisis is happening in real time. And XRP is one of the few assets that's primarily designed for a liquidity crisis. The price of oil might eventually trigger the Bank of Japan to raise interest rates. If that happens, it unwinds the carry trade and puts more pressure on the financial system. When Japan starts dumping US treasuries to protect their currency, we might see the beginning of the end of the financial system as we know. So here's my final message. I remain bullish on XRP on the long term, but short term will have to be realistic. Prepare for both scenarios just in case XRP drops below $1 so you are also mentally prepared. They told us there is a financial reset that's going to happen and XRP stands at the center of this transformation. A neutral bridge asset that can't be controlled by any sovereign nation. For me, every drop is an opportunity to actually accumulate more XRP. I remain bullish on the long term. Let me know in the comments. Are you bullish about XRP adoption?
Well, XRP, and I sometimes have to remind the world of this, but XRP is at the heart and soul of what Ripple is doing. We care deeply. We have called it our North Star. But at the end of the day, we want to do things that are good for the XRP ecosystem. We want to build trust in XRP. We want to build utility in XRP. And we want to build liquidity in XRP. And each of the acquisitions we do, in one way or another, we believe it will do those things. Now, it may not be, some people may look at it and be like, I don't really, scratch their head a little bit. Well, I promise you that we see in the three-dimensional game of chess, we see how we believe that's going to evolve. Sometimes we'll probably do things that are more obvious and some less obvious. That's okay with us.
Right. There might be.
One of the advantages of being private is I don't always have to explain myself to public investors.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to see you in the next video.